So Scott Fitterer, the general manager of the Carolina Panthers, met with the media today, and they've moved up to the number 1 spot. And Bryce Young is the guy that everybody's pointing to. Multiple mock drafts have put Bryce Young number 1. When you hear Adam Schefter talk, you hear Peter King talk. When you hear on the local level, all signs point to Bryce Young. So Fitterer was asked about the concerns regarding Young's frame and build.
I think, nutritionally we can do some things to educate him. We get him in the weight room. You can see when you really look at his lower body has gotten bigger. He's put on a lot of mass down there. A lot of times quarterbacks don't want to lift upper body because you get a little bit bound up. But there's some things he's going to naturally put on size as he ages as well. Again, going back to Russ, I think he came out at 200. Maybe he might have been 206 pounds. He's at 220 now. I mean, guys just grow. That's something he can control, and that's something we can help him with. We can't control the height.
Can't control the height, which is fine. I think people have gotten over that because we've seen successful shorter quarterbacks. It really is about the frame. Now, if he's talking about putting on some weight, I mean, Scott Fitterer, do you have my number? I can point you in the direction of what you need to do to get Bryce Young to put on some weight. I got tips.
Just so you know, the gambling market has now gone to Bryce Young minus 2,000.
Oh, geez.
So you'd have to bet $2,000 to make 100 that Bryce Young will be the first pick in the draft.
Interesting.
Meanwhile, C.J. Stroud up to plus 739. I don't know. Wait a few more days. I might put something down on Stroud
just to see
if it gets up to 1,000.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
10-1.
Yeah, I don't think it's a smokescreen though.
You don't.
I don't. I really don't. Because there's too much. There's too much justification going on right now for the build, the frame, and like the S2 cognitive test. Right. We talked about this last week, and Scott Fitterer was asked about the S2 test and why they use it. They're not the only ones. But people are putting this clear line of correlation between doing well on this test and being successful in the NFL. I believe our computer failed the S2 cognitive test.
Can't make those quick decisions.
Right, here's Fitterer.
We use it so we believe in it, but it's a tool. Just like there's a lot of different tools that we look at, analytics, everything else. It all comes back to the tape is the most important thing that we do, what we watch and we evaluate, and what Cole watches and what Dan watches. S2 is just another tool that we use. It is something we believe in, though.
Apparently Nicole Tepper's watching tape. Love to hear that. Now, all of this goes to the larger point about how they've gained, quote-unquote, clarity on who they want to take with the first pick in the draft.
Obviously, through this whole, since February, the Combine and everything else, there's been some clarity. But we've made a conscious effort to be open mind about this, be continuous throughout the process. We have the last kind of group in today. We have the coaches, Wednesday and Thursday of this week, and at that point, we'll get together and kind of make that decision. But we've got some clarity through this process.
Some clarity through the process, Joe. They're taking Bryce Young.
This would track, though, because I would take C.J. Stroud, and I was worried for a very long time that I was starting to think like the Panthers, and I can't handle that.
Okay.
So this actually makes me happy because I do think C.J. Stroud will be a better NFL quarterback than Bryce Young. I do believe that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I feel like C.J. Stroud is the type of quarterback that would make sense for what Frank Reich has wanted to do. I do think that his athletic ability has been undersold because he didn't necessarily need to use it while he was in college, but we did see flashes of it in the game against Georgia. Look, I have a hard time, a really, really, really hard time with using what is supposed to be your franchise QB pick. This is the guy being an outlier, just a straight up outlier. There have been number 1 picks in the draft that were just obvious. Like, how could you not take this guy? And you know what? Sometimes it doesn't pan out, or maybe it's a short-lived thing. You go back to the Carolina Panthers, and the last time they had the overall number 1 pick, and it was Cam Newton. To me, that was always the obvious thing. Here was a guy who literally dragged Auburn to a national championship.
With what? One other pro, I think, total?
Yes.
On that roster?
And
which is a rare occurrence in college football?
His size, his arm, all those things coming together you could make it work. And
Sure.
obviously they did make it work. He won the MVP. They got to a Super Bowl. With Young, I just feel like you're really trying to argue with me that a guy who's under 200 pounds is going to put on that much more weight.
Which you don't want.
Which you don't want. And as he even said, you can't necessarily do it through bulk because, you want to stay limber. You don't want to affect your throwing motion, right? And I find it odd that you're really just banking on, he's just another Doug Flutie. Because, again, that's the kind of player you're really discussing in terms of frame.
Yeah, I think ultimately Bryce Young, if the Panthers take him, they need to hope that he's Drew Brees.
Yep.
Undersized guy who could play in the pocket and is extraordinarily accurate and intelligent. I do think those are his hallmarks.
Those are the hallmarks.
I do think the quarterback position has changed. I think you are more likely in 2023 than you were in 2011 to gamble on a smaller quarterback. I understand those things. And maybe I am the victim of the current circumstances, but I look at the smaller quarterbacks in the NFL this past year, and the best ability is availability. Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa were not there when their team needed them.
No.
Tagovailoa in particular, they've already done the template of what the Dolphins did what the Panthers are trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Put all the pieces around that quarterback, get the right coach, call the right plays, and the Panthers don't have Tyreek Hill. They don't have Jalen Waddle. They got some better players that they've done a really good job of this offseason.
Oh, they've upgraded.
But they don't have
It's not those
They
guys.
don't have those home run hitters.
Yeah.
And even with those players, Tagovailoa hasn't been able to stay healthy. And if you're going to ask me to compare Bryce Young to anyone in the NFL right now at his position, it would be Tua Tagovailoa.
And even when he was healthy, there was some question as to whether or not what Mike McDaniel was trying to do. You see them again, and you're like, oh, okay. If you jam up those playmakers, if you jam up Tyreek Hill, you jam up Waddle, just how accurate can Tua Tagovailoa be? Can they get him off schedule? And if it's about being on schedule, I don't like my chances.